The phone call came at 11:47 p.m. on a Tuesday in March. Rachel Chen sat bolt upright in bed, her heart already racing before she even saw the name on the screen. When elderly parents call close to midnight, it's never good news. "Mom, what's wrong?" The silence on the other end lasted 3 agonizing seconds. Then came a sound Rachel had never heard her mother make in 38 years of life. A broken, hollow whisper. "Sweetheart, I think I've made a terrible mistake." Those 8 words would unravel everything. A lifetime of savings, a pristine reputation, a family's entire financial future. But at that moment, Rachel had no idea she was about to discover that her 68-year-old mother, a woman who had spent 40 years as a financial analyst, who had taught Rachel how to balance a checkbook at age 10, who had always been the smartest person in every room, had been systematically manipulated, groomed, and robbed of over $2 million by professional romance scammers who had found her at the lowest point of her entire existence. This is the story of Eleanor Chen, a widow, a mother, a grandmother, and a victim of one of the most devastating romance fraud cases we've ever covered on this channel. If you think this could never happen to someone in your family, you need to hear what comes next. To understand how Eleanor Chen ended up here, you have to understand who she was before. Born in 1956 in Millbrook, Oregon, a small logging town about 3 hours south of Portland, Eleanor was the daughter of a hardware store owner and a schoolteacher. She learned the value of a dollar before she learned long division. At 22, she graduated top of her class from Oregon State with a degree in accounting. At 24, she married Thomas Chen, a quiet, steady mechanical engineer she'd met at a church potluck. At 27, she gave birth to Rachel. At 30, her son Marcus came along. For 41 years, Eleanor worked as a financial analyst for a regional insurance company. She climbed the ladder slowly, methodically, never taking unnecessary risks. She and Thomas paid off their mortgage 18 years early. They maxed out their 401k every single year. They took modest vacations, camping trips, visits to relatives, the occasional cruise. By the time Eleanor retired at 63, she and Thomas had accumulated just over $2.4 million in savings and investments. Their home in suburban Millbrook was worth another $600,000, fully paid off. They were set, comfortable, safe. Thomas used a joke that they had boring money. No cryptocurrency, no day trading, no risky ventures. Just decades of discipline, compound interest, and delayed gratification. Eleanor would smile and say, "Boring money is money that stays in your pocket, Thomas." She had no idea how wrong she would one day be. The first crack in Eleanor's world came in March of 2021. Thomas had been feeling tired for weeks. At 69, he brushed it off his age, but the fatigue got worse. Then came the coughing. This was during the height of the pandemic. Hospitals were overwhelmed. By the time Thomas was admitted to the ICU, his oxygen levels had already dropped dangerously low. Rachel remembers the last video call. Her father's face, pale and drawn, behind an oxygen mask. His eyes, usually so calm, now filled with something she'd never seen there before. Fear. "Take care of your mother," he whispered, his voice barely audible over the mechanical hiss of the ventilator. "She's stronger than she knows, but she's going to need you." Thomas Chen passed away on April 3rd, 2021. He was 69 years old. He and Eleanor had been married for 43 years. The funeral was small. Pandemic restrictions limited attendance to 15 people. Eleanor stood at the graveside in a black dress she'd bought online, because all the stores were closed, watching strangers in hazmat suits lower her husband into the ground. She didn't cry. Not then. The crying came later, in the empty house, in the bed that still smelled like him, in the kitchen where his coffee mug still sat beside the sink because she couldn't bear to wash it. But Eleanor's grief was just beginning. 7 weeks after Thomas died, her mother, 93 years old and living in an assisted care facility, passed away from complications of a stroke. Eleanor couldn't visit her in her final days. Pandemic protocols. 3 months after that, her younger sister Margaret lost her battle with pancreatic cancer. In the span of 6 months, Eleanor Chen lost her husband of 4 decades, her mother, and her only sibling. She was, for the first time in her life, truly alone. Rachel noticed the changes gradually. Her mother stopped answering phone calls as quickly. When they did talk, Eleanor's voice was flat, distant. She mentioned that she wasn't sleeping well, that the house felt too big, that she didn't see the point in cooking meals for one person. "Mom, have you thought about seeing someone?" Rachel asked during one call. "A therapist, maybe? Someone to talk to." "I'm fine, sweetheart. Just tired. The winter's been hard this year." Eleanor had always struggled with seasonal affective disorder. The gray Oregon winters hit her harder than most. But this was different. This was grief layered on top of depression, isolation layered on top of loss. She stopped going to church. The pews felt empty without Thomas beside her. She stopped attending her book club. What was the point? She stopped visiting friends. They were all couples, and being around them only reminded her of what she'd lost. By October 2021, Eleanor Chen was spending most of her days alone in a 3,200 square foot house, watching television she didn't care about, eating meals she didn't taste, and waiting for a phone that rarely rang. She was drowning, and no one threw her a rope. So when she stumbled across an online community called Golden Years Connection, a social platform designed for widows and widowers over 60, it felt like a lifeline, a place where people understood, where she wasn't a sad widow bringing down the mood at dinner parties, where others knew what it meant to reach across the bed at 3 a.m. and find only cold sheets. Eleanor created a profile on November 15, 2021. Within 72 hours, she received her first message. And just like that, the trap was set. Right now, someone watching this video is thinking, "This wouldn't happen to MY Mom. My family is too smart for this." That's exactly what Rachel Chen thought. If you have even one person in your life over the age of 55 who lives alone, who's grieving, who spends time online, you need to subscribe to this channel and hit that notification bell right now. Because the information in this video might be the only thing standing between them and complete financial devastation. The scammers are counting on your ignorance. Don't give them that advantage. The message arrived on a Thursday evening. "Good evening, Eleanor. I notice we have something in common. We both lost our spouses during these terrible past few years. My name is David. I lost my wife Rebecca to a long illness in 2020, and I understand that particular kind of loneliness more than I'd like to. If you ever need someone to talk to who truly understands, I'm here. God bless you." Eleanor read the message 3 times. The profile showed a distinguished man in his early 70s. Silver hair neatly combed. Kind blue eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. A warm smile. The photos showed him at what appeared to be a church fundraiser at a construction site, wearing a hard hat, with a golden retriever named Biscuit. His profile said he was a civil engineer who had worked for international development organizations, building infrastructure in developing countries. Currently semi-retired but still consulting on projects. Based in Sacramento, California, just a few hours south. A Christian, a widower, a professional, someone like her. Eleanor hesitated for 2 full days before responding. "Hello, David. Thank you for reaching out. Yes, losing my husband Thomas last year has been, I don't quite have words for it, honestly. Some days, I wonder if I'll ever feel normal again. It's kind of you to write." She hit send before she could second-guess herself. His response came within the hour. "Eleanor, I understand completely. After Rebecca passed, I spent months feeling like half of myself was simply missing, like a phantom limb. People who haven't experienced it can never truly understand. But I want you to know it does get easier. Not better, exactly, but easier. And having someone to talk to who gets it, that makes all the difference. I hope we can be that for each other." What followed was a masterclass in psychological manipulation that Eleanor never saw coming. Over the next several weeks, David Mitchell messaged Eleanor every single day, sometimes multiple times a day. He asked about Thomas, how they met, their wedding, their favorite memories. He shared stories about Rebecca, her love of gardening, her battle with illness, his devastation when she passed. He noticed when Eleanor was having a hard day. He remembered details she'd mentioned in passing. Thomas's favorite song, the restaurant where they'd celebrated their 40th anniversary, the names of their grandchildren. He was attentive, consistent, patient. He was also completely fake. There was no David Mitchell. There was no Rebecca. There was no golden retriever named Biscuit. There was likely no single person at all. Just a rotating team of professional scammers operating out of a call center, each one trained to identify vulnerable targets and exploit their emotional needs with surgical precision. But Eleanor didn't know that. She only knew that for the first time in 18 months. She didn't feel quite so alone. The conversations deepened. David started calling her Ellie, a nickname Thomas had used. He began ending his messages with thinking of you and later missing you. He sent good morning texts at 6:45 a.m. and good night messages at 10 p.m. Ellie, I know we've never met in person, but I feel like I've known you my whole life. Is that strange? Rebecca used to say that some souls recognize each other across lifetimes. I think maybe she was right. Eleanor found herself smiling at her phone, rushing to check her messages first thing in the morning, planning her day around their scheduled video calls, though somehow the video calls never quite worked. His camera was broken. The connection was poor. His project sites didn't have reliable Wi-Fi. She only ever saw photos, heard his voice through crackly audio. The voice was warm, patient, grandfatherly. It told her she was beautiful for her age, that her intelligence was attractive, that God had brought them together for a reason. I know this is fast, David said during one call, his voice crackling with what he claimed was poor reception from a construction site in Kenya. But Eleanor, I think I'm falling in love with you. Eleanor's heart, that lonely, grieving, desperate heart, open like a flower. I think I am too, David. What she didn't know was that somewhere, likely in a cramped apartment in Lagos or a crowded call center in Kuala Lumpur, someone was marking her file with a simple notation. It started small. They always do. In February of 2022, 3 months into their relationship, David mentioned that he was having trouble with a banking issue. His accounts had been temporarily frozen due to a regulatory mix-up related to his international work. He'd already contacted his bank in the States. But these things took time. I hate to even bring this up, Ellie. It's embarrassing. But I have some workers in Kenya who need to be paid by Friday, and if I can't access my funds, these are good men with families. I can't let them down. He needed $5,000. Just a loan. Just until his accounts were unfrozen, which should be any day now. Eleanor felt a small twinge of unease. This was unusual. This was the kind of thing her daughter would warn her about. But then she thought about David's voice, his kindness, the way he'd listened to her talk about Thomas for hours, the way he'd prayed with her over the phone when she was having a particularly dark day. This wasn't some stranger. This was the man she loved. Of course I'll help, David. What do you need me to do? She wired the money that afternoon. The $5,000 was repaid within 2 weeks, deposited back into her account. What Eleanor didn't realize was that the scammers were simply cycling money between victims, creating the illusion of repayment to build trust. See, David said warmly, I told you I'd never let you down. You are the most generous, trusting woman I've ever known. Ellie, what did I do to deserve you? The trust was established. The pattern was set. Now the real extraction could begin over the next 14 months. The requests grew in frequency and size. Equipment shipment stuck in customs. $15,000. A medical emergency. David's sister needed surgery. $45,000. A business opportunity that would secure their future together. $200,000. Each time there was urgency. Each time there was a heartfelt promise of repayment. Each time, Eleanor was made to feel like she was helping the man she loved, the man she was planning to build a life with, because that was the promise that kept her hooked. David was coming to America. Soon, very soon, they would meet in person. They would get married. They would spend their remaining years together. 2 lonely souls who had found each other against all odds. Just a few more months, Ellie. Once this project is finished, I'll be on a plane to Oregon. I'll hold you in my arms. I'll never let you go. The The messages became more elaborate, more romantic, more manipulative. I was walking past a jewelry store today and saw the most beautiful ring. It made me think of you. Someday soon, Ellie. Someday soon. Eleanor, desperate to believe, desperate to have something to hope for, kept sending money. She refinanced her home. She liquidated Thomas's retirement accounts, money they had saved together for 40 years. She cashed in investments, drained savings accounts, even borrowed against her life insurance policy. Her children noticed the changes. Rachel called one evening in September of 2022, concerned. "Mom, I've been looking at my notifications from the family financial dashboard. You've made some really large transfers in the past few months. Is everything okay?" Eleanor's response was rehearsed. David had prepared her for exactly this conversation. "I'm making some investments, sweetheart. Restructuring my portfolio. It's nothing to worry about. I know what I'm doing. I was a financial analyst for 40 years, remember?" "I know, Mom, but these amounts are really significant, and the destinations look strange. Are you working with a financial advisor?" A pause. Then, more firmly, "Rachel, I'm your mother. I'm not senile. I appreciate your concern, but I don't need you managing my finances. I know what I'm doing." She didn't know what she was doing, but she couldn't admit that, not to her daughter and not to herself. 30 seconds. That's how long it takes to subscribe to this channel. Right now, there are over 18 million active romance scam victims in the United States alone. 18 million people who woke up this morning and sent money to people who don't exist. If you're not subscribed to this channel, you're choosing ignorance. And ignorance is exactly what these criminals count on. Hit subscribe. Hit the bell. And if you won't do it for yourself, do it for the people in your life who are too trusting, too lonely, or too proud to ask for help. The next victim could be someone you love. Rachel wasn't the only one who noticed. Marcus, Eleanor's son, flew up from Los Angeles in November of 2022 for a surprise visit. What he found horrified him. The house was in disarray. Eleanor, who had always been meticulously organized, had stacks of paperwork everywhere. Wire transfer receipts, international shipping forms, pages and pages of handwritten calculations. "Mom, what is all this?" Eleanor tried to hide the papers, but Marcus was faster. He read the figures. He saw the destinations: Nigeria, Malaysia, the Philippines. He saw the amounts: $50,000 here, $100,000 there. Numbers that made his head spin. Mom, what have you done?" "It's not what it looks like. Marcus, David is going to pay it all back. He's coming here in 2 months. We're going to get married. This is an investment in our future." Marcus felt his blood run cold. "Mom, who is David? Have you ever met this man in person?" "We video chat all the time." "Have you seen his face? In real time? On video?" A pause. Too long. His camera, there have been technical difficulties. Marcus grabbed his mother's shoulders. "Mom, listen to me. This is a scam. Do you understand me? David doesn't exist. There is no project in Kenya. There is no marriage. There's only a group of criminals who have figured out that you're lonely and vulnerable, and they are bleeding you dry." Eleanor pulled away, her face flushing with anger. "You don't know him like I do, Marcus. You don't understand our connection. David loves me. He's the only person who's been there for me since your father died. Where were you? Where was your sister? Calling once a week? Visiting twice a year? David calls me every single day. He listens to me. He cares about me." The words were a knife in Marcus's chest. But more than that, they were a warning sign he didn't fully recognize at the time. The scammers had successfully isolated Eleanor from her family, reframing her children's concern as abandonment and their warnings as jealousy. "Mom, please, just stop sending money. For 1 month, let me do some research. Let me try to verify. I think you should leave, Marcus." He left that night. He called Rachel from the airport, his voice shaking. "It's worse than we thought. Way worse. She's completely in their grip, and I don't know how to break through." Rachel called in reinforcements. Their Aunt Patricia, Eleanor's sister-in-law. Pat had been married to Thomas's brother for 35 years. She and Eleanor had been close enough that maybe, just maybe, Eleanor would listen. Pat drove 3 hours to have lunch with Eleanor in early January 2023. She approached it gently, talked about grief, about loneliness, about how easy it was to be manipulated when you were hurting. Eleanor nodded along politely. Then Pat mentioned David. "Eleanor, honey, have you ever actually seen this man's face?" In real time. The wall came up instantly. "Not you too, Patricia. I thought you at least would understand." "I'm trying to understand, Eleanor. Help me understand. You're one of the smartest women I've ever known. If someone was telling me this story, the old Eleanor would have spotted the red flags immediately. What's different now?" Eleanor's eyes glistened with tears. "What's different, Patricia, is that I'm alone. I'm 68 years old. My husband is dead. My mother is dead. My sister is dead. And I wake up every single morning in an empty house wondering why I should even bother getting out of bed. David gives me a reason. He makes me feel like I matter. And I would rather believe in something beautiful, even if there's a chance it's not real, than accept that the rest of my life is going to be this." Pat reached across the table to take Eleanor's hand. "Oh, honey, I know the risks. Patricia, I've done the math. But I'm an adult, and this is my money, and this is my choice. Please, just let me have this." Pat left that afternoon with a heavy heart and a horrifying certainty. Eleanor was beyond their reach. The scammers had won, or so it seemed. In March of 2023, something finally broke through. Eleanor's bank, the same institution where she'd held accounts for 40 years, flagged her for unusual activity. Over the past 16 months, she had wired nearly $2.1 million to various international destinations. The pattern matched known romance scam profiles. The bank's fraud department did something unusual. They sent local police to conduct a welfare check. 2 officers arrived at Eleanor's door on a Wednesday afternoon. They were kind, respectful, but direct. "Ma'am, we receive a report of potential financial exploitation. We're here to make sure you're okay." Eleanor was polite, but firm. "I appreciate your concern, officers, but I'm perfectly fine. I'm a retired financial analyst. I know exactly what I'm doing with my money. I'm not being exploited. I'm making investments and helping my fiancé with his business." "Your fiancé, ma'am? Have you met this person in person?" "Our relationship is primarily long distance for now, but he's coming to visit soon." The officers exchanged a look that Eleanor chose not to interpret. "Ma'am, would you be willing to sit down with someone from our fraud prevention unit, just to review the situation? It wouldn't obligate you to anything, but—" "That won't be necessary, officer. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a video call scheduled." She closed the door, locked it, and immediately messaged David. "The police were just here. Someone must have reported our transactions. I handled it, but I'm worried." David's response came within minutes. "Ellie, my love, this is exactly what I warned you about. The authorities don't understand international business. They see transfers and assume the worst. Don't let them come between us. You know the truth. You know our love is real. Let me handle this. I have contacts who can make sure there's no further trouble. But I'm going to need your help." He requested another $75,000 to resolve the banking issues on his end. Eleanor sent it the next day. The end came not with dramatic confrontation or a sudden revelation. It came with a package. In late April 2023, Eleanor received a notice that a shipment she'd sent to an address in Manila had been returned. The package was flagged by international customs for suspected money laundering. Money laundering. Eleanor stared at the notice, her hands trembling. She had sent that package at David's request. It contained documents that David said were essential for his business, but she'd also included, at his request, $25,000 in cash hidden inside the pages of several old books. "It's the only way to get past the corrupt customs officials," David had explained. "Otherwise, the money gets confiscated." It had seemed reasonable at the time. David had explained it so logically. He always had an explanation for everything. But now, reading the word suspected money laundering on an official government document, something cracked in Eleanor's mind. She sat down at her computer. The The same computer where she'd spent thousands of hours talking to David, and did something she should have done 16 months earlier. She searched David Mitchell romance scam. The results were immediate, devastating, undeniable. The photos of David belonged to a retired physician in Michigan who had been begging for years to have his stolen images removed from scam sites. He'd never been to Kenya. He'd never worked in construction. He was happily married to his wife of 50 years and had no idea his face was being used to defraud lonely widows around the world. Eleanor scrolled through website after website. Fraud alerts, victim testimonials, case studies, her own story, repeated 100 times with different names, different faces, same devastating outcome. She sat in her chair for 3 hours, reading, not moving, not crying, just reading. At 4:17 p.m., she picked up her phone and called her daughter. "Rachel, I need help. I've made a terrible mistake." The full accounting took weeks to complete. Total money lost, $2,143,000. This included the entirety of Thomas's retirement accounts, $890,000. Eleanor's personal savings, $620,000. Home equity loan, $400,000. Cash advances on credit cards, $140,000. Life insurance policy surrender, $93,000. But the losses didn't stop there. Because Eleanor had liquidated retirement accounts early and without proper tax planning, she now owed the IRS nearly $485,000 in taxes and penalties. Money she didn't have. The family home, the house where Rachel and Marcus had grown up, where Thomas had built a tree house in the backyard, where 40 years of memories lived in every room, would likely have to be sold. And even that might not cover the debt. Eleanor, who had planned to leave a comfortable inheritance for her children and grandchildren, would likely spend her remaining years dependent on their financial support. If she was lucky, the emotional toll was perhaps even worse than the financial devastation. Eleanor was placed on suicide watch for the first 2 weeks. She was prescribed antidepressants and anti-anxiety medication. Rachel took a leave of absence from her job to stay with her mother full-time. Marcus flew in every weekend. The FBI was contacted. They took Eleanor's statement, gathered evidence, and told the family what they didn't want to hear. The chances of recovering any money were essentially zero. These scammers operated overseas, used sophisticated techniques to launder funds through multiple jurisdictions, and were almost never caught. "I've seen cases like this before," the agent told Rachel privately. "I wish I could give you more hope. But the best thing you can do now is focus on your mother's recovery. The money is gone. Your mother is still here." A lawyer was consulted about potential options. A private investigator was hired to trace the funds. Neither offered much optimism. Eleanor met with a trauma counselor who specialized in romance fraud victims. She learned that she wasn't alone. Romance scams cost Americans over $1.3 billion per year, with victims over 60 losing the most money per case. She learned that professional scammers use sophisticated psychological techniques that can overcome even the most intelligent, skeptical targets. She learned that her vulnerability was not a character flaw, but a human condition that had been deliberately exploited. It helped, a little, but every night, Eleanor still lay awake in her bed, the bed she had shared with Thomas, the bed she had hoped to someday share with David, and wonder how she had become this person, how she had fallen so far, how she had betrayed her husband's memory, her children's trust, and her own principles for a voice on a phone that had never been real. 6 months after the revelation, Eleanor entered an outpatient therapy program specifically designed for fraud victims. It was, she told Rachel later, the hardest thing she'd ever done. "I've never felt more ashamed in my life," she admitted during one of their weekly dinners. "I sat in that room with other victims, doctors, lawyers, teachers, people you would never expect, and I realized we all had the same story. We were all lonely. We were all targeted. We were all told we were special, and we all fell for it. It's not your fault, Mom. It is my fault, Rachel. At least partly. I saw the red flags. I just chose to ignore them, because believing the lie was easier than accepting the truth." Rachel reached across the table and took her mother's hand. You were grieving, Mom. You lost Dad. You lost Grandma. You lost Aunt Margaret. You were drowning, and someone threw you what looked like a rope. How could you know it was a trap? Eleanor's eyes filled with tears. Your father would be so disappointed in me. No. Rachel's voice was firm. Dad would be furious at the people who did this to you, and he would be proud of you for coming forward, for getting help, for fighting to put your life back together. That's who you are, Mom. That's who you've always been. Eleanor Chen's story isn't over. The legal proceedings continue. The financial recovery, what little of it is possible, is ongoing. The house may still be lost, but Eleanor herself is still here, still fighting, still healing. And now, she's made it her mission to prevent others from falling into the same trap. If you made it this far in this video, you're already ahead of 90% of the population when it comes to scam awareness. But awareness isn't enough. You need to share this information. Right now, share this video. Send it to every person over 50 in your contact list. Your parents, your aunts and uncles, your grandparents, your neighbors. Don't assume they already know. Don't assume they're too smart to fall for it. Eleanor Chen had 40 years of financial expertise, and she still lost everything. If you haven't subscribed yet, what are you waiting for? An email from a Nigerian prince? Subscribe, share, protect the people you love. The scammers are counting on your silence. Eleanor asked us to share these lessons. Lessons she learned too late. Lessons that might save you or someone you love from the same fate. Lesson 1. Verify before you trust. If you meet someone online who claims to be romantically interested in you, verify their identity independently. Reverse image search their photos. Ask for a live video call with face-to-face interaction. If they consistently have excuses for why they can't video chat, broken camera, bad connection, work restrictions, that is a massive red flag. Real people who want real relationships find ways to show their face. Scammers don't. Lesson 2. Never send money to someone you've never met in person. This should be non-negotiable. It doesn't matter how compelling their story is. It doesn't matter how long you've been talking. It doesn't matter how much you think you love them. If someone you've never met in person asks you for money, for any reason, the answer is always no. This includes cash, wire transfers, gift cards, cryptocurrency, and investment opportunities. Real partners don't ask for money before they've ever held your hand. Lesson 3. Involve family before major financial decisions. If you're considering sending any amount over $1,000 to anyone, especially someone you've met online, tell a family member first. Not because you need permission, but because outside perspective can reveal red flags you're too close to see. If you find yourself hiding financial decisions from family, that itself is a warning sign. Scammers deliberately isolate their victims. Don't let them. Lesson 4. Recognize the patterns. Romance scammers follow predictable scripts. They target people who are recently widowed, divorced, or lonely. They claim to be professionals working overseas, military, engineers, doctors. They build intense emotional connections very quickly, love bombing. They always have excuses for why they can't meet in person. They eventually ask for money, with increasingly urgent and elaborate stories. If someone you met online checks more than 2 of these boxes, you are likely being scammed. Disengage immediately. Lesson 5. Shame is the scammer's best friend. The reason romance scams are so underreported is shame. Victims are embarrassed to admit what happened. They're afraid of being judged. They stay silent. This silence protects the scammers and endangers future victims. If you or someone you know has been targeted, report it to the FBI's IC3, Internet Crime Complaint Center, to local police, to the FTC. Your report could be the piece of evidence that helps law enforcement take down an entire criminal network. And please talk about it. Share your story. Your honesty could save someone else's life savings. This is the part where I ask you to subscribe. And normally, I give you statistics or talk about the algorithm. But after a story like Eleanor's, I don't want to play games. If you found value in this video, subscribe. If you learned something you didn't know, subscribe. If you thought even once about someone in your life who might be vulnerable to this kind of scam, subscribe, and send them this video. Every subscription helps this channel reach more people. Every share puts this information in front of someone who might need it. Every comment boosts this video in the algorithm and helps it find the lonely widow or widower who's about to make the worst mistake of their life. You could be part of the problem, scrolling past, forgetting, moving on, or you can be part of the solution. I think about Eleanor Chen a lot. Not the Eleanor who lost $2 million to faceless criminals. Not the Eleanor who ignored her children's warnings and sent money to a man who didn't exist. I think about the Eleanor before, the young woman who worked her way through college, the wife who stood beside her husband for 43 years, the mother who raised 2 children on camping trips and home-cooked meals, the financial analyst who spent 4 decades helping others protect their money. That Eleanor didn't disappear. She was still there, underneath the grief and the loneliness and the manipulation. She just got lost for a while. And that's the tragedy that doesn't make the headlines. It's not just about the money. It's about the violation, the betrayal, the way these criminals take the best parts of us, our capacity for love, our desire for connection, our willingness to trust, and weaponize them against us. Eleanor's story doesn't have a happy ending. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But it has something that might matter more. A warning. The scammers are out there. Right now. Tonight. Looking for the next lonely widow. The next grieving father. The next isolated soul desperate for connection in a disconnected world. They're patient. They're professional. And they're very, very good at what they do. Your job is to be better. To stay alert. To protect the people you love. And to remember that in the digital age, the most dangerous predators don't wear masks or carry weapons. They wear the face of love. If you or someone you know has been affected by a romance scam, resources are available. The FBI's Internet Crime Complaint Center, IC3, accepts reports. Don't stay silent. Don't suffer alone. And if you haven't subscribed yet, what are you waiting for? Hit subscribe. Hit the bell. And we'll see you in the next one. Stay safe out there.